Moin, ihr wunderbaren Menschen des Interwebs. Ich begrüße euch ganz herzlich zurück zu meinem Let's Play von The Great Ace-Attorney Chronicles. Wir sind bei Chigokus Aussage hier stehen geblieben, The Events in the Cabin, und werden uns einmal anhören, was er zu sagen hat, was seiner Meinung nach wirklich passiert ist. I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin after finishing my evening meal in the dining room. When I walked through the door, a mustached Englishman was there, foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with an Ibon Sayo throw, though he couldn't wait to run away after that. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. It has nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed having returned to Britain because his body was found in London. A common jujutsu martial arts technique in my country. I was careful not to use too much force, but the man obviously landed too heavily for his watch to take. So Ryunosuke Naruhodo, I imagine you can see the flaw in your logic now, can't you? What? The fact that the pocket watch was broken in the witness's cabin in no way proves that the victim's murder took place there. Das ist doch jetzt nur also an den Haaren herbeigezogen, jetzt mal ganz ehrlich. I have no doubt the inspector intended to kill me, but he didn't manage to pull the trigger. Yes, because he was merely the tactician, not the Reaper's hand of death. Well, the testimony appears to make perfect sense as far as I can tell. Let me express my deep gratitude for your understanding, my lord. But if this testimony holds, Judge Goku will be deemed to have had no involvement in the case. Well, counsel, I really see no reason for wasting precious court time here on a cross-examination. Sorry, my lord, the defense has a right to cross-examine, and I don't intend to squander that. You're an embarrassment to your countrymen, not knowing when you're beaten. In that case, proceed, Mr. Naruhodo. Ja, aber ich bin auch noch nicht geschlagen. Und ich werde das jetzt auch ganz sicher nicht auf mir sitzen lassen. Ja, also so eine billige Ausrede, das soll es gewesen sein? Ich glaube ja wohl nicht. So, I had a guest waiting for me when I returned to my cabin. Ja, das ist Gregson. When I walked through the door, a mustached Englishman was there foolishly waving a gun at me. I soon took care of him with an Ibon throw, though he couldn't wait to run away after that. I imagine his watch was broken when I threw him over my shoulder. There's nothing to do with his murder. The inspector was clearly killed, having returned to Britain because his body was found in London. But there is no evidence that proves the victim ever returned to London alive. Just take a moment to think that idea of yours through now, Stripling. What? If the inspector was killed on the steamship in France, how on earth could he have got back to Britain? When people die, their bodies remain at that same spot. It's a devil of a thing. Well, then, obviously the culprit must have moved the body. How exactly? Carrying a corpse of a ship in your arms would raise a few eyebrows at least, don't you think? Well, yes, that's true, but all passengers' luggage is inspected when it is unloaded from arriving vessels, and I would like to think the border police would query the corpse of an English gentleman as hand luggage. If the murder had taken place aboard the ship, you would imagine the body would have been disposed of at sea. There would be no sense in risking being caught by attempting to transport the body back to Britain. Let's kill that idea then. But perhaps not, Miss Susato. We've heard that the first-class passengers were under constant scrutiny by the crewmen posted to guard them, which would mean that the culprit had no opportunity to dispose of the body in the sea. Yes, that's true. So transporting the body to Britain may have been the only viable alternative. Dear me, you really are new to this, aren't you? I thought I'd been perfectly clear, but it seems I'm going to have to explain it in words you can understand. I think I ought to alter my testimony with your consent. With your consent, of course, my lord. I have no objection. State your amended testimony now. There is no possible way I could have transported the victim's corpse back to Britain. Danke, Jigoku. Ich habe gehofft, dass du so etwas sagen würdest, denn hast du schon. Wenn ich's finde. Und zwar hier, Commemorative Photograph. Ja, alles, was in diesem Spiel passiert, hat einen Sinn, vor allem, wenn du das in die Gerichtsakte bekommst. Und wisst ihr noch, als wir dieses Foto damals gemacht haben, habe ich mir dieses Foto sofort angeguckt, habe geguckt, okay, was könnte man hierfür verwenden für ein, also was könnte auf diesem Foto wichtig sein? Und ich habe eben gesagt, der Koffer ist das Erste, was dir in den Sinn kommt. Was noch wichtig sein könnte, vielleicht das Taschentuch, aus welchem Grund auch immer. Aber, obviously, der Koffer hier. Und genau das werde ich ihm jetzt auch um die Ohren hauen. There's no possible way you could have moved Inspector Gregson's body, you say? I would say the opposite is true. And what's that supposed to mean? Far from being impossible for you to do. The transporting of Inspector Gregson's body back to Britain is something only you could do. What are you talking about, Ryunosuke? As well as being a judge, Mr. Jigoku is also Japan's Minister of Foreign Affairs. Which means he's exempt from having his luggage searched when he enters the country. We learned that when we first met you upon your arrival in London. Well, all those passport checks and luggage searches at the border took rather a lot of time. I must say, I'm very envious of your ministerial status. You didn't have to go through any of that, did you? Oh, I knew you were jealous. I presume you recall this, Jigoku. It's a photograph we took in the foyer of the hotel to mark the occasion. As the court will note, you have with you your large travel trunk. Large enough, in fact, to have a corpse inside. I'm afraid I am, yes. 3 days ago, when we were chatting innocently with the new arrivals from Japan in the hotel, the body of Inspector Gregson was just meters away from us inside Jigoku's trunk. I'm skeptical, Counsel, that a grown man's body could fit inside even the largest travel trunk. It could. Because I happen to know that the witness himself, a man of considerable size, fits inside his trunk. And verifying that would be extremely simple, wouldn't it, Judge Jigoku? But inside his trunk, how horrifying. And after we'd spoken with you at the Great Waterloo Hotel, you had the opportunity to visit the apparent scene on Fresno Street, taking your trunk with you in a cab to dispose of the inspector's body. I don't have to listen to this nonsense. Dr. Gori, the coroner who examined the body, has confirmed the possibility. She's acknowledged there are signs that steps may have been taken to disguise the true time of death. The onset of the body's decomposition could have been delayed by storing it in a refrigerator. Counsel, as I remember explaining yesterday, refrigerators of the requisite size are few and far between. Yes, I'm sure they are, but one place they are certainly found is on large ocean liners. Such ships are equipped with electrically refrigerated cold rooms to keep food fresh on their long sea voyages. And the SS Grus is no exception. Professor Mikotoba told me about it only yesterday. Well, Jigoku. However much you prolong this debate, you can't eliminate the truth. All the evidence points to you being the killer. Well, this is all very heartening. I can see that it was a wise move, letting Asogi and you embark on this study tour. What are you talking about now? Logical reasoning, of course. All court proceedings will be built on logical reasoning in the new century. And I can see that you've both laid firm foundations for that already. Judge Shigoku, please, stop diverting attention from the issue at hand. The defense has made an accusation against you. How do you respond? Respond? There's really no need for me to respond, is there? Why ever not? Because before you can even begin to answer the question of when the victim was killed, you must first establish one key fact. Where was the victim killed? It's quite logical. The actual scene of the crime. The prosecution stance is unaltered. The killing took place on Fresno Street when the gunshot was heard. As the accused, Barack Fonseca shot the victim at point-blank range. Since no tangible evidence exists to disprove the prosecution's claim at this time, the defense's deductions amount to little more than an elaborate fairy tale. I'm afraid that's how the logical reasoning the British are known for really works, young stripling. The victim was shot in that little room on Fresno Street and died instantly. I'm afraid that's the prosecution's claim. That's the only fairy tale here. How can you say that? Quite simply, because the claim directly contradicts a certain piece of evidence in our possession. Very tantalizing, counsel. I think you had better explain yourself to the court, don't you? The prosecution claims that Inspector Gregson died instantly when he was shot at the scene on Fresno Street. But this evidence clearly contradicts that claim. Das kann eigentlich nur das Foto sein. The photograph of the victim in the very location you claim he wasn't killed. Yes, but the point is the posture of the body itself. If Inspector Gregson had been shot there in that room, it's out of the question that his body would have been curled up in a ball like that. I'm sorry to disappoint you, but your logic is flawed. He could easily have adopted that fetal position due to the pain of the shot, which subsequently proved fatal. I am sorry to disappoint you, Judge Shigoku, but it's your logic that is flawed. According to this autopsy report, the victim died instantly. He would have felt no pain, much less have been able to draw himself into that position. Which begs the question of why the victim's body is curled up in that way. So, the answer should be abundantly clear by now. You're suggesting the inspector's body took on that posture ahead of its arrival on Fresno Street, before it was coldly turned out on the floor. From the inside of a large travel trunk. Judge Shigoku, present your trunk for examination. I believe it's very possible that it will contain traces of the victim's blood. Present my trunk. I refuse. On what grounds? I'm the Minister of Foreign Affairs from the Empire of Japan. I shouldn't have to put up with this treatment just because of some strupling's baseless accusations. In other words, Judge Shigoku, there is blood in your trunk. I decline to answer that. As the Minister of Foreign Affairs, I have privileges that... At this moment, you're not a government minister. You're a witness in a trial in Britain's highest court. I don't care who you are or what your status outside this courtroom might be, you will not withhold information. Nothing is more important than the truth. Well, Mr. Jigoku, what's it to be? You can't be serious. You did it? Have you no shame at all, Kazuma Sogi? Very well. I admit it. I did bring the inspector's body into the country. Inside my trunk. exactly as postulated by the defense. So it was you. You admit to... No, I admit to nothing more than what I've said. Of killing the man, I certainly have no recollection. What on earth is that cryptic statement supposed to mean? I merely disposed of the inspector's body, which was left in my cabin, in order to avoid unwanted attention. As the judicial assistant over there pointed out, I had no chance to throw it into the ocean. So, I decided my only option was to bring it into Britain with me and dispose of it somewhere else. You can't still deny it. If you didn't do it, then who on earth did kill the man? As you know, there was one other person in my cabin that night. He had the opportunity. And moreover, he'd already accepted a mission to take the inspector's life. That's right, who else could it have been? It was you, Kazuma Sogi. I never thought you would stop. You would stoop to this, Seshiro Shigoku. You've taken the words straight out of my mouth, Prosecutor Kazuma Sogi. You thought by leaving the body in my cabin you could pin the crime on me, did you? Well, the prosecution counsel has already admitted to visiting the witness's cabin on the night in question. Yes, on an assassination mission, no less. So, what do you make of that, young strolling? You've heard my testimony now, and that's all I have to say on that matter. I will admit to nothing more. I don't believe this. Counsel for the defense, what is your position now? The court awaits your response to the witness's assertion. The assertion that on the night in question, the victim's assailant was in fact Mr. Kazuma Asogi. This isn't a dead end, it seems to be. The answer's right in front of me. It comes down to Chigoku or Kazuma. Both of them had the opportunity to kill Gregson, but only one of them did it. And I'm just a step away from proving who. Very well, the defense is ready to respond to the assertion put forward by Judge Shigoku. The idea that the victim's murder could have been committed by Prosecutor Isogi is... impossible. Judge Shigoku, let me remind you of something you said only a few minutes ago. You claimed that logical reasoning is the future of the judicial process. It is, no question. Well, logical reasoning can prove something here. Namely, that it would have been impossible for Prosecutor Isogi to commit the crime. The court will only accept an argument that is supported by compelling evidence. So present what you have, counsel. What proof is there that allegedly demonstrates the impossibility of Prosecutor Isogi's involvement? Dysentery for crew members of the SS Cruise, my lord. This is conclusive proof. How does that prove anything? Judge Shigoku, the moment you acknowledged that you found the victim's body in your cabin, dysentery suddenly became much more significant. On the night in question, as always, a crewman sentry was on guard outside your cabin door. As long as he was there, nobody could have fired a shot inside the cabin. Absolutely, because it's inconceivable that the guard wouldn't have heard it and come to investigate. So that tells us that the crime must have taken place when the guard was elsewhere. And that narrows it down to the 20 minutes just after 10 o'clock as indicated on the itinerary. Yes, I see no flaw in your reasoning so far. But the crucial point is this: when the evacuation drill took place, the steamship had already put to sea from the port of Dunkirk. Now, clearly the murder could have only been committed by somebody who was aboard the vessel at the time. But Prosecutor Isogi stated in yesterday's proceedings, I didn't come to Great Britain to take anyone's life, so I left Gregson and disembarked the ship. I spent the night at a boarding house in the town and returned to England the following morning. Which I'm sure the court will agree is conclusive proof that Kazuma Asogi couldn't possibly have carried out the killing. No, absolutely not. I don't accept that at all. What do you mean? The boy's just saying that to exonerate himself. We can trust that he really disembarked the vessel. Obviously, after he left my cabin, he'd hid himself somewhere nearby on the ship. Just waiting for his chance to come back and finish the... No, that's out of the question. Isn't it, Kazuma? As the defense rightly recalls, I disembarked the vessel and spent the night in a boarding house in Dunkirk. And as I said yesterday, I signed my name in the Commendations Register book. All extremely easy to verify and undeniable proof. There's no escape this time. You can forget that you're a judge or a government minister. It's time you gave the court an honest answer as a common man. You killed Inspector Tobias Gregson and transported his corpse back to Britain. Then you dumped the body in the room on Fresno Street and made it look as if the murder had happened there. That's what really happened, isn't it, Seshiro Chigoku? It was that damn trial 10 years ago. That's when all this began. Looking back now, my fate was decided that day. I was doomed already. A British assassin to eliminate a professor in Japan, a Japanese assassin to eliminate a detective in Britain. Both assassins will use diplomatic immunity to evade conviction and return safely to their homelands. The assassin exchange request arrived from Britain about 1 year ago. Though it was hardly a request, it was a demand. And for that, you decided to recruit Mr. Sogi. But things didn't go according to plan. Your chosen assassin never made it to Britain, and you found yourself unable to dispatch a replacement, because I was already on my way to Britain, at that time in Kazuma's place. And that left me with only one option for carrying out my obligation. To eliminate the mark myself, personally. Of course, there was but a single opportunity for me to do that. The International Forensic Science Symposium, I presume? That's right. I decided it would be the safest to carry out the plan before my arrival in Britain, so I enlisted the help of my British counterpart, and made arrangements for a pretext that would take the inspector to Dunkirk. To lure the man in, he was given a sham mission by the Reaper. The Reaper? But there's only one person who could have done that. The mastermind of the entire operation. The Reaper himself. So that means that the assassin exchange was all planned by the Reaper? I'm not at liberty to say anything about my British counterpart. Anyway, the inspector accepted the Reaper's mission and dutifully infiltrated my cabin on the steamship, but it was all a trap designed to lead him to France and his own death. It was past 9 o'clock when I returned to my cabin from the dining hall that evening. I didn't give him time to attack me. I choked him until he lost consciousness. But there was a guard just outside the door, so I left it at that for the time being. Even the slightest noise might have aroused suspicion, so I bided my time waiting. For the 20 minutes after 10 o'clock. I had intended to finish him by strangulation, but moments before I had the chance, he suddenly came around and went for me in a reckless move. I'd received the British issue gun 16 years earlier, being a member of the Judiciary as a visiting student. I never imagined I'd have to use it for something like that. So the revolver belongs to you, does it? Then the victim was killed inside your cabin on the SS Cruise, which begs the question of why you arranged for his body to be discovered in the room on Fresno Street. The young judicial assistant over there has already answered that question. There was no way I could take the body up on deck to throw it over the side. That's precisely where all the crewmen were gathered for the evacuation drill. So before the first-class cabin sentries returned, I took the corpse to the refrigeration room. And then on arriving in Dover, you concealed the body in your trunk in order to smuggle it past the border police. I knew I needed to take steps if the police were to be convinced when the body was found in London. In that case, you must have known. You must have had intimate details of Inspector Gregson's intended schedule. Yes, my British counterpart sent me everything I needed to know. The inspector was due at Fresno Street at 5 o'clock that afternoon, in order to meet a man by the name of Hugh Bone, from whom he would take back his police identification. I decided that man would be the perfect person to set up as the culprit, so I took a Hackney carriage over there with the body still in my trunk. It must have been just after we took this photograph with you at the hotel then. Yes, I wasn't expecting a welcoming committee, I was more than a little nervous. On Fresno Street I spotted a young girl selling little firecrackers. It's Venus, of course. I conceived of the candle trick there and then, so I donned a simple disguise and approached the girl to buy enough firecrackers to replicate a gunshot. What sort of disguise? For some reason, the inspector had a bright red hairpiece on his own traveling case, so I put that on. Also, I suspect I drew more attention to myself in that than I would have otherwise. The hairpiece we found at the scene, the inspector had it ready for the red-headed leak investigation. I only arrived at the room at around 4:45, so I quickly placed the body on the floor, moved the notice board and set up my little candle trick. I arranged it so the firecrackers would go off with a bang around 15 minutes later, so that Mr. Bone, who was due to arrive at 5, would walk straight into a trap. Except at the last moment, I made a careless blunder. What was that? I imagine it was the bag of fish and chips. I didn't notice that it had fallen out of his overcoat pocket when I moved the body to the refrigeration room. I put it back into his pocket the following morning, but... well, it seems the warmth of the heated cabin had accelerated the decay of the fish. Anyway, that's everything. All the sordid details of what I did. I've heard enough. We've arrived at the truth about the murder of one of the country's most capable and respected police inspectors. The witness will be tried in the coming days. For a crime of such a vile nature, you can expect the most severe penalty. An exchange of assassins. What a foolhardy idea. Mr. Jigoku, one last detail. Who was your counterpart in Britain? Who was the mastermind behind the assassin exchange? Nothing you say now can make matters any worse for you. Just tell us. I've already told you that I cannot say. Even though as things stand, you may very well never set foot in your homeland again. What are you waiting for? Can't we get this over with now? It's finished. All of it. I'm finished. Then in the name of Her Majesty the Queen, I now pronounce the findings of this court. This man before us has admitted to the willful murder of Tobias Gregson. Sashiro Jigoku, it is the opinion of this court that you should be found. Könnten wir trotzdem Einspruch erheben, weil ich habe noch ganz viele Fragen. Ich meine, also ich finde es echt extrem schade, dass Jigoku wirklich so ein Mensch ist, weil als wir ihn eben dann doch noch so ein bisschen kennengelernt haben, eben so kurz, wo wir ihn mit Mikotoba und so gesehen haben, habe ich das echt nicht erwartet, dass er zu sowas fähig wäre. Also das finde ich schon schade. Aber ich habe so viele Fragen. Wer ist denn jetzt der Reaper? Wer hat ihm diese Befehle gegeben? Wie hängt Kazumas Vater mit der ganzen Sache? Wie hängt der da mit drin? Das sind einfach noch so viele Fragen. And may I remind all those present of the strict confidentiality demanded by this close court. Moments ago, Mr. Jigoku signed a written confession, admitting to the murder of Inspector Gregson and the subsequent conveyance of the body. In short, the defendant's innocence has therefore been established beyond doubt. Oh, wonderful. Well done, Mr. Naruhodo. Yes, thank you. Something wrong? I'm just a little troubled by his silence. The true identity of the Reaper of the Bailey and this extraordinary assassin exchange, we do remain in the dark about these mysteries. However, insofar as the indictment brought against the defendant in this trial, we have reached a conclusion. I have every intention of pursuing both mysteries. As a prosecutor, as you wish. Now, for the formal adjudication, I hereby declare the defendant Barak von Siegs the prosecution calls for adjudication to be deferred. Counsel, the accused's innocence hasn't been fully established at all, and therefore it would be wrong to deliver a verdict at this time. That is the prosecution's unwavering position. But Judge Jigoku has already confessed. Ja, aber dadurch, dass wir immer noch nicht wissen, wer der Reaper ist, könnte Barak ja derjenige sein, der alle Fäden gezogen hat im Hintergrund. Und ich glaube, dass darauf Kazuma hinaus möchte. Auch wenn ich nicht glaube, dass Barak das ist. Nevertheless, Barak von Siegs has committed crimes for which he must be punished. It would appear you have information that the court needs to hear, Prosecutor Sogi. Certainly, the murder of Inspector Gregson was actually carried out by Sashiro Jigoku, but it's clear from the witness's testimony that he was coerced into complying with the plot, into this sick, merciless assassin exchange. That may be true, but... So what I want to know is, who coerced Jigoku, who was pulling the strings? The victim went to France, having been ordered on a mission for the Reaper, only to be murdered. In other words, the mastermind behind the assassin exchange is someone in a position to give such an order. As we've already established, the Reaper himself. Well, certainly that would appear to follow. The prosecution hereby formally accuses the man in the dock, Barak von Siegs, of being the Reaper of the Bailey, and furthermore, I'm going to prove his guilt beyond all reasonable doubt. The Reaper of the Bailey is a long-standing mystery, Counsel. Or are you suggesting you have some new information with which to build a case? Scotland Yard has already investigated Lord von Siegs very thoroughly in that regard, and they found no evidence whatsoever to substantiate the claim that he is the Reaper. Perhaps, but circumstances have now changed. What do you mean? It's already been established that the assassin exchange was negotiated with Jigoku by the Reaper himself, which means we now have a new line of questioning by which to identify definitely the man's identity. That is the prosecution's intention here. I must say I'm surprised by quite how tenaciously you appear to want to besmirch my name. You are guilty of an unforgivable crime, Lord von Zieks. And I will bring you to justice for it, whatever it takes. That explains Kazuma's silence before. He will stop at nothing to finish what Lord von Zieks unwittingly started 10 years ago. Very well, whilst it's extremely irregular, I will on this occasion grant the prosecution further opportunity for witness testimony. The defendant will disclose any and all all involvement he has had with the Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. I thank you, my lord, for guiding the court so wisely. I hereby declare this court to be in session for a supplementary hearing. Ray turned a blind eye to the discourtesy as I verified that this vile and unremitting accusation censored the contents of my hallowed chalice. Also, ich muss einmal ganz kurz was trinken. I first had to sever the pseudonym of the Reaper 10 years ago now, and ever since at that time I have endured the weight of implied guilt that's gone with it. So I welcome the chance to testify now and crush those allegations once and for all. Good. Then let justice decide, Lord von Zieks. The prosecution seeks to begin building its case by calling the accused to the stand as the primary witness, in order that he may answer the accusations brought by the prosecution that he is the Reaper of the Bailey. And what says the defense? Putting the defendant in the witness stand can be extremely dangerous, and Kazuma-sama is so emotional at the moment, he's not thinking logically. You're right that he's not himself, but I knew it would be like this. And I came here today determined to face him through whatever might arise. As a lawyer and as his friend. And that's what we must do. The defense has no objection, my lord. Very well, defendant, you will take the witness stand and give formal testimony on the subject of your involvement with the Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. As you wish, my lord. Okay, The Reaper and the Assassin Exchange. Das ist die nächste Zeugenaussage und mit der geht es im nächsten Part weiter. Ich hoffe, oder ich meine, wir müssen ja jetzt der restlichen Wahrheit auf die Spur kommen. Wir haben zwar jetzt den Mord um Gregson aufgeklärt und wie gesagt, es tut mir immer noch wirklich leid, dass Jigoku der Mörder ist. Irgendwie fand ich ihn anfangs doch recht sympathisch, aber ich möchte endlich wissen, wer dieser Strippenzieher ist. Ich habe ein paar Verdächtige in meinem Kopf, aber ich kann davon nichts beweisen und kann mir auch nicht sicher sein, ob es wirklich stimmt. Ich glaube nach wie vor fest daran, dass Barock unschuldig ist. Und ich hoffe, dass wir in dem nächsten Part oder in den nächsten Parts endlich das Gesamtbild erhalten, das uns noch fehlt. Hier gibt es jetzt aber erstmal einen Cut. Ich bedanke mich ganz herzlich fürs Zusehen. Hoffe, ihr hattet Spaß. Und wenn ihr mögt, sehen wir uns sehr, sehr gerne im nächsten Part wieder. Bis dahin. Ciao.